Namaste. In an earlier video, I talked about the movement or the concept of open source software. Couple of days back, I was invited to give a talk about open source in two different forums, and I was pleasantly surprised and very happy that the open source movement is again picking up momentum, and which is something that we have been very active many years back, as I mentioned there. But I also noticed that, for many people, open source means that something that you can download free. You go to firefox.org and download Firefox, or you get a Linux distribution, or you get a GIMP editor. So for most of these major open source software, there are its own websites. So you go there and download them, and you can use them freely as much as you like. And that is the concept of open source that many people seems to have. So I think I'm going to just take a few minutes to tell you that this is true, but there is more to this truth than what meets the eye. So first of all, as I mentioned in the previous video, so do refer to that if you are not yet done so. It is not something that is freely downloadable and then you can forget it. There is a whole process. There is a legal sanctity to open source software. And there are fundamental degrees of freedom that open source software is supposed to guarantee and preserve to ensure that this principle is maintained. So I'll talk a little bit more about what makes something as an open source, right? So if you go to the website opensource.org, that has a lot of details about it. And one of the things that you should look at is the definition of open source. There are 10 conditions that is given there. So it is not that the open source software directly enforces these conditions, but every open source software has a definite license agreement. So like when you download any proprietary software, you are supposed to click saying I agree to a lot of licensing running into multiple pages. Similarly, open source software also has an associated license. You might hear about GPL, LGPL, MPL, Eclipse public license, and so on and so on. Okay, there are about 50 to 50 plus different licenses, but these 10 conditions are common or in the backbone of these conditions. So what does a license of open source software do? So one, it is basically to assert that whoever has created the software, I am the owner of that software. The license is issued by that owner of the software, and asserting that I am the owner, but I am happily giving away the freedom for you to do all that thing that we discussed earlier. To inspect code, to modify, to redistribute, to give it any name, all that things, all those permissions are explicitly granted through that license. And that is what, and at the same time, the license needs to protect the open source principles, right? The freedom that goes with it and all that need to be preserved and protected. Otherwise, I'll download some open source, I will modify it, give it my name, and then I can sell it and make money. I might even corrupt it by creating and adding unwanted things there and distribute it. So all of these kind of things may happen through vested interest. So these 10 conditions are basically to protect that from happening. So you can go to the website and read more detail, but let me just briefly tell you what these things are. So the first thing that it says is that free redistribution. So the license allows the license that is used for open source software must allow anybody who downloads it to freely redistribute it. No questions should be asked. You don't give it to this person. You don't give it to that. Don't allow this, etc. It should be freely redistributable without any conditions attached. The second condition that it puts is that the source code must be made available with the distribution. So when I am giving away any open source software, the full source code of that must be made available. Now there are a lot of catches here. because if you are aware of programming languages, I may actually write a program with very neatly proper variable names and all that, and then before I provide for redistribution, I can make all the variable names as I1, I2, I3, I4, remove all the comments, do all the indentation. The compiler won't understand any of this, right? The compiler doesn't understand the significance of all this, or doesn't even process all this. So the code will compile and run just as before, but somebody who looks at the code won't be able to make any sense out of it, okay, without a lot of support in understanding it. This is not allowed. So the license explicitly says you should not obfuscate the software, the code, before releasing it. Well, remember, the whole philosophy is that we want to encourage other people to build on and extend, because that is how my software will live, and it will go through a lot of positive enhancements. It can become a big system by itself. Now, for things like, for example, MSMEs and small organization, it is not possible to create 100 people task force to build and manage and maintain just one software. But when you open up and encourage the community to support you, not just 100, you get literally thousands and tens of thousands of people who will actually happily help you, because in return they are getting that software free, and also a platform on which they can build extension, they can learn programming and all that. So there is a lot of other these components that supports the ecosystem. So source code distribution is mandatory for open source licenses. Similarly, derived works. So it should allow modifications. As I mentioned, that is the key degree of freedom, and the modified work also should be distributable. This is also to be mandated or guaranteed by the license that is used there. The next two conditions are the real spirit of open source, saying, I am not the law enforcement agency. This may vary from country to country, state to state, from group to group. So from the software developer side, there should be no restriction on who gets access to the source code and who does use it and how, for what purpose it is used. Okay, so this might look like a little negative, and national security and all that kind of things, but the idea is that there are separate channels. We have law enforcement, law tracking machinery and all that. They are better judges of these kind of things, and as software development, it is not, I cannot just put a licensing rule saying that it should not be given to somebody and expect that it will be complied. So I am detaching from that and say, as a software developer, nobody should say, oh, this software is not for you, this software is not for somebody. So no discrimination against persons or groups, no discrimination against fields of endeavor. So whatever area that you work in, whether you are working with the biotechnology or computer science or agriculture or healthcare, no questions are asked. It should be made available to them. Similarly, the distribution of license. The license, you are getting the software with a specific license, and when you want to redistribute it, it should not get linked with other licenses. Like only if you get Microsoft Windows or Oracle DB, only then this license will apply, or the software is runnable. Okay, so the rights attached to the program must apply to all to whom the program is redistributed, without the need for execution of any additional license by those. Okay, so it is just keep removing the strings out and say, yes, you download a software and you can use it. No other things actually comes in there. The next three conditions actually again makes the licensing mechanism cleaner and ensures that the open source philosophy is sustained. So one, it says the license must not be specific to a product. So it should not be that this will work only with that another piece of software, or it should be this should be part of some existing distribution. No, this is open source software. It should be usable and runnable as it is. Okay, so license must not be specific to a product. It should also not restrict other software. So if you use this software, you cannot use that, or you cannot be part of this, or you cannot do this. That is also not allowed, because again, the spirit is that we want to encourage collaboration, cooperation, and co-development to build quality source systems. Okay, so the license should not restrict any other software, and as far as possible, the license must be technology neutral. So it should not be tied to a particular technology. So the license is about the software and the functionality, right? So these conditions actually are carefully crafted to make sure that somebody who downloads this open source software are not locking it up, not creating any disturbance in terms of propagating it further, and at the same time they understand and follow that same philosophy. Now, there are some conditions. For example, I may actually be building a commercial product and I want to use some open source in it, and those kind of situations may arise. There are specific licenses which looks at those consents and gives you ways out to how to handle those kind of things. But when you are downloading any software, do look at the license and ensure that it is actually a proper open source software. The website actually gives you a list of all the different licenses that are known, and when you build a software, you can also look at the most appropriate license and make your software available through that channel. So I think we should encourage more and more open source software being built. Students building their projects, colleges building systems, etc., could actually adopt these, make this available, and it could help us build a very great national ecosystem for software, which allows a lot of small units and industries, etc., to make use of it. Thank you. Have a great day, and see you next time.